If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, that's a phrase that is widely attributed to Bert Lance. You may remember him during the Carter presidency. Back in 1977, Bert Lance was the director of the Office of Management and Budget. It ain't broke, don't fix it. May still be true for some things, but not for digital media. I'm Nancy J, and I want to thank you all for joining us as we dig into what it takes to transform your commerce experience. Now, your commerce experience, e-commerce may not be broke, but our panel of experts are actually going to guide us from the monolith to microservices architecture and beyond. So let's meet our guides today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Let me start first. To my right is Kelly Goetsch, Chief Product Officer, CommerceTools, and author. We'll talk about your books in a little bit. Asit Kumar over here at the end, Commerce Practice Director, Mastek Inc., and also then Mike Cristancho, Director, Solutions Consulting, Mastek. Love the signs behind you. We all know who we are. So what is it about e-commerce that's changing? Where are we at this point in time?
I think there are increasing expectations by customers. It used to be that we would release code to production once a month, once every 2 months. I've even heard of large retailers releasing once a year as an annual thing. And now I think Amazon has really upped the pace, and Amazon is releasing hundreds of new features every day. And I think a lot of traditional retailers and brands and manufacturers and others are looking and saying, well, why can't I release that fast, right? What's the problem? And customers on the other side are used to having that Amazon experience. They're used to having all those features, and we just, as an industry, we haven't been able to meet that pace.
So where does Mastek come into this play?
Yeah, as the solution provider, as the implementation partner for our clients, what they've really seen is customer demand as far as what channel they want to interact with. Go 15 years ago, the brand, the manufacturer, they could push down basically the messaging of, if you want to buy from us, you visit these locations, you go to this.com, and this is how you will interact with us. That has shifted, thanks to Amazon and in part and others, that now the consumer has all the power. I want to interact with you on a mobile device. I want to interact in your e-com site, physical retail. And that shift, the power has come to us. As consumers around the table, we all buy things. So we have the power, and thus it has changed the approach. So for us, our clients, between Asit and myself, we're constantly focused on, what are your customers telling you, or your end consumers telling you, and how can you kind of take that quantitative approach and distill it down into technology?
I think, the customer interaction is not just limited to buying products anymore. And it has went beyond that. There are multiple touch points we have with customers now. And, the commerce platform has to be ready to support all those touch points and, be, not just the shopping experience, but beyond, So that's the reason, I feel that's what the experience is changing in commerce. As a Mastek, we have solid experience implementing, providing guidance to our customers on the commerce domains. And
So what about the whole idea of the monolith architecture versus the MSA, which is the microservices approach? Where are we today with that?
So we used to build applications as one fully integrated, think of it as like a ball of code almost. And if you wanted to make a change to that, you had to retest the entire thing from top to bottom. And you guys can talk about that on the implementation side, but that's what led to these really long release cycles. It's because everything was so interconnected, and you almost had to be a brain surgeon to go in and know exactly where and how to make changes. And Amazon, again, going back to Amazon, it was a famous memo that Jeff Bezos sent out to his staff in 2002 that actually made the case for microservices. And I can talk about that later, but it really started there, and then the rest of the industry really adopted it from there. And microservices allows you to have small vertical teams, typically 7 people, give or take, cross-functional, and they're responsible for building a little application and exposing some business functionality and data over an API. And then the concept is that team can then iterate as fast as they want. So you could have a team of 7 building just inventory for an entire enterprise, and anybody who needs inventory can then call that one single API, and that team can iterate on their own as fast as they want. So you get lots and lots of smaller teams iterating very quickly, rather than one big team all coming together and working on that one big integrated code base. So it's a really big game changer in terms of development methodologies and everything else.
Big game changer for you.
It's, when we used to build system before, right, our approach was still the same, that we will keep the module separate, let a standard defined way to interact between the modules. But what happens over the time, we start with that, but between the modules or the components, we keep it open how they interact. And with the feature building starts happening on top of that, there is no control between how the systems are modules are interacting between them each other now. So it just goes beyond managed. We can't control. Upgrade is very painful, and that's where whatever we are starting guidelines we had, how to take that guideline, right, and build a system that we don't get into this mess again, right? So the module that we had, let's keep that, but keep it separate. Let it run separate. That's where the microservices architecture came into play. It's just a set of guidelines that we used to develop before, but the systems were open to, left open to interact, and we built a system which we could not maintain after that. So to my point, just follow the standards properly this time, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think all I would add to that, I agree with both points. It's ultimately every business that we run into, whether it's a current client or prospect or someone in the marketplace, they're unique. Their business requirements are unique. And so to think that a monolithic application can serve everyone is a little obtuse, to be honest. So I think the flexibility required to scale a non-typical commerce. So obviously, if you're selling apparel, that's fairly straightforward in our space. But if you're selling bus tickets, or if you're selling digital tokens in a video game, if you're selling buying a pizza over voice, the marketplace has just really changed, and so the flexibility is just necessary at this time.
Does it have to be all or nothing, though? You either have to go with the MSA model, or that's it? You can't change anything?
You can do a good hybrid. So we see customers who are on legacy platforms, and nobody has budget. Nobody has $100 million budget to do a full reimplementation from scratch.
And it's going to take time. It's a big system that we have built over the time.
So what they'll do is they'll leave that big core monolithic system intact, and then they'll innovate on the edges. They'll peel out just the product API. They'll peel out the inventory, the pricing. And slowly over time, the functions are rebuilt as microservices that surround the monolith, and the monolith just shrinks until eventually it just disappears.
I think you touched on this, but some of the benefits of going in that direction, this new direction.
Yeah, I think from the implementation side and from just the partnership side, we have customers that, and clients that have been with us for a very long time, and they've made an investment. And so to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. VP, you now need to pay $2 million to re-architect something that you built 5 years ago. It's a very tough conversation. But utilizing something called the strangler approach to what Kelly's defining is effectively what's something that other units of the business can get value to, order lookup, invoice lookup, that type of process. We can start to peel that off and kind of strangle it is what's called. It's a kind of colloquial term, but effectively we can do that and help our customers kind of iterate on a roadmap that kind of extends, but they can still reap the benefit of their original investment, but continue to respond to the market.
I think we're trying to build architecture which is flexible for the change for the future. That is what we're trying to achieve with this architecture.
Well, and I also have been hearing the words scalability and reusability as being very, very important for this platform.
So you could scale up each piece individually. So if you want to write a microservice that's responsible for retrieving inventory, you could use an in-memory caching grid, for example, right? Use the right technology for the right business function. And very, very quickly, you can then scale that up. rather than in the past, you'd have a big monolithic system and you'd have to use general purpose programming language, general purpose database, general purpose everything, and then scale up that whole thing as a single unit, where now you can say, I'm going to use exactly the right tools for this business function or this bit of data, and then I want to scale that automatically. And it makes it much easier.
Those are adoption strategies then, right? Would you say? Is that part of the headless commerce?
Yeah, I'd say that,
because I really want to know what that means.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. It's obviously you hit the trade show floor, and over the last 2 years, it's really been a phrase that we hear quite a bit. And honestly, it's really the first step. So I won't get into the technical piece. I'll let the technical guys really go into that. But effectively, what you're trying to do is disjoin the front end experience. So your CMS, your experience from the back end of the application, from any database requirements or whatnot. And so that allows you kind of the first step. And I think I'll see if these guys agree, but effectively for clients that don't take that first step, it's going to be very difficult to move to an MSA because of the JavaScript calls and API calls and just unlocking where you're pulling data in from the front end. But
we started taking that step, when we started building mobile app, which was totally different than the web interaction that customer had. And we could not use the same thing on the mobile app. So we started building this APIs or services. So that time we started building this API on the same monolithic systems, and that is what the headless is, that, there is no user experience that we are building on the backend systems. Yeah.
I wish we didn't have such morbid terms between headless and strangler.
That's right. Really, who comes up with those terms? So you don't have that answer, do you? You're not quite sure?
No, it seems to pop up. I'm sure someone somewhere has coined the term, but effectively it's just,
Dirk Horrig with headless and Martin Fowler with strangler.
Yeah.
So those are the two.
It just seems that, obviously as customers, or consumers rather, demand more touch points. You also have to his point, the mobile app might have a completely different experience, more simplistic, more straightforward. A kiosk like Redbox or something like that experience could be completely different than their website. So you have to think that it's fit for purpose. The experience is fit for purpose. And to do that, that's where the headless component comes from. It allows you more flexibility, and that's just the key word on all of this, flexibility and
They're
scalability.
decoupled. So now the front end can go much, much faster. Different skill set.
Everything new that we hear, voice commerce, visual commerce, behind the scene, they all need an API to get the data and deliver what we need.
How about some real world examples? Any businesses or anything that we can, besides Amazon?
Well, I think every larger retailer has done or is doing microservices today, because you cannot have an application that's 5, 10, 20, 30 million lines of code and scale that. It just doesn't work. So, every single household name you've heard of is using microservices, and we're starting to see it work its way down into the market. So those doing 250 million a year in online revenue, right? That's now the threshold that people are starting to adopt microservices, and it's just getting pushed down further and further. But yeah, I would say it's definitely, at least from a vendor standpoint, we see it everywhere. I know Mastek, you still have a handful of customers in that older world, and they're modernizing. But from our standpoint, we see it absolutely everywhere.
And sometimes we are seeing the need coming because of some security concerns. The language or the platform that we have built is either we have to upgrade that platform, and there are some security concerns that we can't achieve on that platform, right? Concerns. So we need to either upgrade or we have to take some, rebuild it or do something different. And that is where some customers are taking that strategy.
You just can't stay on a platform that was built in the 90s for a different era. Now today we have social media, we have mobile devices, we have lots more customer touch points. Yeah. Customer expectations are much higher. You have to use a new platform that was built in the cloud for the cloud. You can't rely on 90s. Mark Zuckerberg was in 3rd grade when Netscape came out. You can't use a commerce platform from that era for today's consumer. They need more than that. And that's why we've seen so much adoption in the market.
Yeah, as far as our clients go, we can reference a couple. So Court Furniture, that's actually here in Texas, they realized, and Asit can kind of speak to it, they realized that their search function just wasn't up to snuff. It wasn't delivering the performance or capabilities. And Asit, do you want to kind of talk about what we did for them from the search perspective?
Yeah, so we built their, this search where they have the codes or the leasing that they do, because they do the furniture rentals. So that was a massive data that we have. So we built that application as a separate service. That complete stack is separate. It uses, since it's a search, we took the open source route, we took Solar Engine, and then we built the microservices, and it's performing far better than the initial approach that we had. So that was a good success story there, and that is why we are seeing this success, and then we are trying to approach in that direction with whatever solutions we are building right now. That's the direction we're taking, and I think the commercetools platform gives us the opportunity to pick and choose and implement that, do take this path faster than what customer can do on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another example from one of our clients, I can't name them, but they're in a kind of the eyewear and healthcare space, and effectively deal with a lot of insurance companies. And that's a service that they use all across the enterprise. They have a retail footprint, they have .com, they have other mobile experiences, and effectively they had to build that stack, to Asit's point, to be compliant with standards outside of anybody's control. The government is telling you from a HIPAA perspective what it needs to reach. And so that is just a vertical product for them. It's basically, their insurance team handles and runs that. And so that was, built out, and then the e-commerce experience is calling that. So Mike Cristancho has $350 of prescription value, and he can use that to shop online. But that is not a part necessarily of the application. It's a part of the enterprise architecture, that any application that needs to hit insurance payment, you go here, you bring it back. But they're constantly worried about compliance, performance, et cetera. They're not, they don't really care what's happening on the e-commerce side. That's a great example of one of our clients and how they're going about it.
How does one get started? So let's say I have this product. It ain't broke, but I do want to fix it. How do we do that? I mean, what do you need? Is there transition? What about the team? How do you avoid the problems?
I think you need to be headless first. So you need to have your front end decoupled from your back end. And then you can adopt the strangler patterns. Martin Fowler famously came up with that, I guess our guru in our field. And it makes perfect sense, right? You slowly strangle the monolith, right? And you break out granular pieces of business functionality. And either we can do that from commercetools, or you can build them custom as well. You can consume them from other parties. But the point being is you start peeling off pieces of functionality until there's no functionality left anymore in the monolith. And eventually, over the course of 6 months to a year, something like that, it just disappears.
That doesn't seem like a bad time frame.
No, it's not bad.
I mean, not when you were talking about decades now that things have changed. I mean,
no, it's a lot faster than it used to be. And just as an industry, we've been maturing, right? If you look at engineering trades, like civil engineering, if you look at architecture, those have been around since, for thousands and thousands of years. Computer science is pretty new. And I think it's just been over the past decade that we've really figured out DevOps, we've figured out cloud. We as an industry are maturing. And back in the 90s and early 2000s, we used to have a lot of collective failures of projects. That was a common thing. And today you just don't have that. Projects go well, right? We've all collectively had decades of experience doing this as an industry. The technology has matured and evolved quite a bit. And that's why we see 6 months, year, sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, but the challenges really aren't anymore with the technology. It's just a matter of how fast you want to go.
And maybe the team structure, who you've got implementing these things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll say, from kind of taking a half step back to your question of how do you get started, what we've seen for our clients is really it starts at the top. So leadership has to understand the opportunity. If you don't have leadership involved with the discussions, and honestly, for most, it takes some education. To Kelly's point, this is a kind of a 5-year scale that we're on now, and some customers need to be educated on the value. So that's where we come in alongside commercetools and say, let's communicate some customer success stories. Let's communicate the opportunity and how the technology can help get there. But leadership, and then a clear visual roadmap. So understanding, it may be cataloged today, but it's intended to serve this business need, and then tomorrow inventory, and it serves this business need. And I think if you logically lay it out in a roadmap, it's a no-brainer. It really is. But I think taking the time and expecting, these customers to do it all by themselves is very difficult. So that's what I've seen from the solution consulting side.
Once we kind of, like Kelly said, right, once we kind of decouple the front end and back end, most of the time I've seen the team understands which module is not tightly coupled with others, and which is going to give a better impact to the end customers, like, scalability and all. So which part of the application really gets heavy load or heavy traffic. So those are the guidelines we can, follow to identify which piece of the puzzle to take it out and build the microservices first. And then we go more and more, complex functionalities. I think once we solve or build one microservices, the organization or the team will feel very much comfortable to just take on the next one, And like the team size Kelly mentioned, one team doing everything for that service, right? And I do believe the existing team can handle, but they definitely need a good support and guidance from the team or the SI who has done it, and so that they take the right direction from the beginning. Don't do the same research or try and error that we have already faced and we have solved it, right? So
we very much agree. You need a good partner to guide you through this transition.
So will this transition fit into the next 5 years, 10 years? I mean, if you have to look ahead, and we know things are going to continue to change, will this work as we move into the future? I mean, it's stagnant.
All technology is adopted according to a bell curve. Pretty straightforward. And right now, the top of that bell curve is starting to adopt microservices, right? The early third has already gone there last year, the year before. And now we're getting to the point where the mass market is actually adopting it right now. And there's a long tail there, right? There are still people running AS400 mainframe systems from the 70s. So people will be doing commerce the traditional way for a long time still, but the vast majority of the market has taken steps in this direction or has already done it or is planning on doing it, just because that old approach doesn't work anymore.
I'm a consumer. All I care about is clicking and getting my package delivered. Hopefully not by drone. I still prefer someone bringing it to my door. But how is MSA making a difference, and will a consumer notice it?
The short answer, and this is for me, I'll let others answer, is I hope not. I hope that the experience is so clean and easy that you don't have to ask yourself, why isn't it loading? Or why is this a struggle? Or why can't I look up inventory in my local, big box retailer or small box retailer? So I would hope the answer is you would see no impact whatsoever. Now, most people don't want to know how the sausage is made, right? There's 27 applications on the back end of a great experience, but that's where we have made our careers. So from the consumer side, and I can speak for myself and everyone, we want it clean, easy, and as soon as possible. And I don't think that changes in the next 5 to 10 years.
It's features like ship to store, for example, or supporting different promotion types, or rolling out a new loyalty program. Those are all things that used to take 6+ months as part of a coordinated project. And now you can release them much faster. So it's just getting more functionality in the hands of business or of consumers quickly. And it's also empowering your business users to make changes as well.
I believe I heard this term, I think maybe from you, Mike, retail apocalypse.
Yeah, it's another one of those trade
I like that way that sounds.
Discussions. And I think, again, it's just the shift that the consumer has the power. And so if they choose to visit you in a brick and mortar store, then that's fine. I don't believe retail is dead. I don't think, Mastek has that position. I think it has a very strong place for experiential, feel, touch, taste, even at times. Look at the companies that are succeeding right now. So I think it's really just a shift. I think that's kind of a radicalized term. Retail apocalypse. It sounds good on the news stories, but I think it really it defines the shifts. You have to look at the data, the amount of store closures. This year, the amount of closures will outpace the amount of openings. Last year was not the same. It was close. It was about 50-50. But this year will be the first year there's more closures than there is openings, here in the States at least. And so if the data, if you're going to be blind to the data, that's a different question. So that's what we see. We just see a shift. BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, ship to home, ways to enable your physical retail locations.
Return at the store.
Return at the store, exactly. Partnerships, Kohl's has done that with Amazon. So those type things, you just have to think outside the box. But by no means do we think physical retail will cease to exist. It's been around since the markets where you went and bought your, meats and veggies and whatnot, 2,000 years ago. So,
and nowadays they are supporting in terms of shipping within, few hours. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what their stores are helping.
Casey Loboff from Deloitte came out with a great report last year titled "The Great Retail Bifurcation," and I think it really makes a lot of sense what's happening in the market. But you see, at the very top end, you see Amazon and Walmart and a few of the the big guys out there, and they're really competing on price. They offer a very large assortment of goods, very fast delivery, but they don't offer much in terms of an experience, right? It's like walking into a Walmart, right? It's kind of boring, right? And people go there for low prices. But on the other side of it, you see, and that's a value-oriented consumer. But the rest of the market, which is actually expanding quite a bit, is the experience-oriented consumer. And they want to connect with a brand. They want to feel part of it. They like the endorsements. They like to be able to look at extended product fit data. They're more about an experience and engaging with a brand and buying things as part of an overall experience with a brand, not, who sells something for $1 cheaper. And it's the experience side of commerce. That side needs to change much more quickly. That side is very focused on content and integrating that as part of the experience. So yes, the core undifferentiated, the JCPenney's of the world, I hate to pick on them, but there's a lot of middle retail that isn't really differentiating on experience or on value. That side of it is declining. And that's why I think a lot of we've seen a lot of store vacancies, but on the other side, there are a lot more smaller retail stores popping up. Bookstores are being reinvented, apparel stores, take your pick, but they're more experiences and you happen to be buying things. And it's that side of the market that really benefits from microservices as well, being able to iterate very quickly.
So when you all go online and you maybe do some shopping, are you like going, having dinner with a doctor and you're going to start talking to him about what's wrong with you to see if you can't get some answers? I mean, do you see things that us normal people, just us normal consumers wouldn't even notice?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the experiences that because we know, again, how the sausage is made. So for it to be a clean, easy experience, we know it's a lot of work. It's, there's many, many hours of work on the back end. So I have an appreciation from it. When I see something clean, it's like, yes, they nailed it. Or, they're on their way. A lot of times you don't nail it the first time. It's really, we have a customer, Vitamin Shop, who they're trying to get their, sales team out from behind the desk where the, point of sale is and out into the floor. So they have tablets, they can look up loyalty, they can look up the customer. Everything is there in front of them to really say, I've seen you purchase this, or you're on a subscription for this. We actually got a new product that we think will be perfect for you. And that's really just a proactive approach to customer engagement. So when you see things like that, the consumer, they just say, oh, that's neat, but there's a ton of technology on the back end of that as well. So I definitely have an appreciation beyond, the average person. So
it's when I see something right, start coming in my mind, what's the system behind it? Kind of, when we look at the website, we sometimes see the experience and I like, okay, they must have done this way, kind of, so it's keep coming in mind because that's how. Yeah.
Well, we've kind of just scratched the surface. There's so many more things we could talk about. Is there a point that we may have missed, or maybe the one question that people always ask you about getting into MSA?
GraphQL. That's my most recent endeavor. We see it everywhere. We've collaborated on some initiatives. GraphQL was actually started by Facebook. So in 2014, they needed to rebuild their mobile app. And Facebook has a problem of having lots and lots of different devices that they have to support because they have like 2 billion people around the world connecting to Facebook. All of those people have different devices. So the old way of doing it was you'd call each API individually, which obviously didn't lead to a very good experience. So they created this query language, right, using graphs for their APIs. So this sits on top of the REST APIs, and it allows front-end developers to basically query, like you would query a database for data, but now you can query your APIs for data. So you could retrieve data from 20 different APIs in one single query, and it's the GraphQL layer that then goes and calls the individual APIs, it authenticates with them, and that's a game changer. We're seeing that absolutely everywhere, and we're starting to see it across commerce, across retail, so we're pretty bullish on that. Okay. Exciting.
Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. You look for performance perspective. You asked about consumer. The worst thing online is just load times. If it's not loading in 2.3 seconds or less, I think you're losing half your your potential customers. And then beyond that, they may not come back ever again. So yes, performance is huge. What we've seen as far as just to your question of what's something else that's coming up is again really where people want to start. They tend to take it as a technical question because it is very technical in nature. But our recommendation is to use something like customer journey mapping, which is a service line that we offer at Mastek to really just visualize the experience first. The technology serves the need. It's fit for purpose. That's the whole benefit, the flexibility, the scalability. It enables that experience. But a lot of people don't start with that base hit of what are our consumers demanding from us. So we always try to recommend that to any new prospect. Have you done customer journey mapping or any level of road mapping? And that would be my answer.
And I think we should also suggest that they find some of your product available online. I mean, let's start with you. I mean, you have books. You have a book that we can actually get online?
We have Microservices for Modern Commerce.
Oh, okay.
That was published in 2016 by O'Reilly. We have APIs for Modern Commerce, 2017 by O'Reilly. And I just finished GraphQL for Modern Commerce, which will be out in January.
How long does it take you to write each one of those?
It's terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes way too long.
Okay, but they're there. So, and I know that we've got. Is there a website?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a website. It's go to commercetools.com and you can click on resources and you can download the books there for free.
Okay. And you all came up with a white paper.
Yes.
Not to be confused with the White Album.
Exactly.
So what is a white paper?
It's about what we discussed today, some of these. It's about what microservices is and what are the steps we can take to take our monolithic platform in that direction.
Yeah, and it just is really a great first read. I think it's less than 20 pages, and it really just helps you identify the multiple areas and variants and approaches. And we definitely recommend that as you read through it, start to dog-ear certain pages, start to write little notes of this can apply to my business or it can't. So it's really just it's an educational tool, but it's a conversation starter. By no means is it going to touch on every single vertical and business out there. But our goal was to really just start the conversation. And I think that leads to good results.
It is easily readable. For me, I read it. And I thank you because you actually started out, if it's not broken, should you fix it? I mean, that was kind of what I just thought about and how important it is to be able to have some other ways of doing business as we move forward. And I found some really interesting statistics here that I just thought I'd throw out at you really quick because I'm asking if commercetools and Mastek are responsible for these numbers. In 2017, e-commerce was responsible for $2.3 trillion in sales. 2021, which is only, a year away, 4.5 trillion is projected. And apparently we are growing 15% each year. So are you taking responsibility for that?
Yeah, I think we'd like to say yes. I think as an industry, it's just, again, back to the consumer demand. So I think we had the number, I think it was like $4.5 billion in transactions just for our clients last year. I can look that up and share it. But that's just the amount of revenue that's come through just our clients alone. So it's quite a significant number. And to your point, it's growing 15 to 20% depending on your area. And it's quite exciting. That's really why we wake up in the morning, is an opportunity to work with our clients and do meaningful work. And, we're excited for sure.
Yeah. You also have to look, it's not just commerce that, like online web commerce, like we're thinking traditionally. Commerce is often now at the point of sale as well. So we have quite a few customers who use us to complete orders in the store. So all the physical store sales are also, depending on how you do your accounting, technically online sales because it's accessing the same platform. There's also a large number of physical in-store sales are influenced by the web. So before I'll go into a store, I'll often research from that brand or the retailer. I'll research the product and then I'll physically go there and buy it. I might have done all the shopping online ahead of time, but I actually completed the transaction in store. So it's hard, those numbers you cited are probably even lower than they should be because you have so many web influenced or mobile influenced transactions in stores.
Well, I'm ready to go do some shopping. I mean, you've kind of motivated me here, and I'm going to look at it differently, which is interesting. So I thank you so much, Asit, Mike, Kelly. Thank you very, very much. And I know people are going to be looking for the white paper in your books, and let's do some shopping. This is the next generation of commerce. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. commercetools and Mastek.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.